Hey, it's Kwan with the Daybreak Devo, and I had this phrase that the Lord's put into my spirit over the last few days that I've just been meditating upon and just talking with the Lord about. I just thought I'd invite you into the conversation we've been having. He said to me, Kwan, what are the things that you do to be pleasing? And what are the things you would do if you knew you already were pleasing? I love it when the Lord talks to me that way because the Lord's doing a work in my heart. That means that He's bringing me into a greater sense of maturity, a greater depth of His love, a greater affection and closeness to Jesus and being made more like Him. When He's speaking that way to me is lovingly as a father. I love it when He does that. And so I just wanted to invite you into that because I think that you can probably relate. I know that we all have seasons or times or even just moments throughout our day where we find ourselves wanting to be acceptable, wanting to be pleasing, wanting to be approved of. Not that we live our lives from that place all the time. It's not the point. I know there may have been a season in my life where I lived the majority of my life that way, but yeah, it's not who I am. Yet I still find myself doing it at times, and I'm so thankful that by the Lord's grace, He brought that conversation to me, that He asked me that question. And so as I've just been pondering this with Him and talking with Him about it, I started thinking about a few different things in the scriptures, like, for example, Cain and Abel. The first time we see that whole premise of being acceptable to God by something that you can bring, right? Something that you can do. Because that's really what the Lord was talking about. What are the things that I do to be pleasing? And here you see Cain, he brought an offering, and the Lord did not approve of it. He didn't accept it. It was not favorable. And then Abel brought his offering, and the Lord did accept it. And the Lord's favor was upon him. Loud cars driving by. Cain was upset, and the Lord started talking to him and say, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? Yet, Cain, out of that whole just place of comparison and jealousy and rage and rejection, resentment, all you can fill in, all the rest of the things, he murdered his own brother because he wasn't acceptable. As the Lord has talked to me about that as well, I've just thought about a lot about, the things that I do versus the things that I would do. And I had to wonder, like, if they would even really be very different. I don't know that they would. In fact, I doubt that they would. And here's what I mean. I think I would do the same things because it's not about the things that I'm doing or not doing. Like, I'm not doing anything that's that's really wrong or whatever, and that's not even what makes me acceptable when I do things that are right. It's not about what I'm doing or not doing. It's about my intentions, the motives of my heart, the posture of my heart, what I hope to see happen from what I do, and my understanding about what I do. You see, I think that's what the Lord was even wanting to talk to me about, because it could all look the same with what I do. And that's why a lot of times people can walk around and they can do things and it looks good, but what's really going on? And I think the Lord was wanting to talk to me about what's really going on. When I see Jesus in the New Testament, I don't see Him talking about people's sacrifices. Like, Jesus didn't come to do away with the law. So let me just make that clear. Jesus said, I came to fulfill the law. So the whole sacrificial system that Cain and Abel were operating in to be acceptable to God was carried all throughout the Old Testament. And even in Jesus' time, they were still bringing sacrifices into the temple. Jesus said, I came to fulfill the law. But I don't see Jesus going into the temple and making a big deal and praising people for their sacrifices. Like, I don't see Jesus walking in saying, that is a very fine turtle dove. That lamb, I've not seen a lamb so spotless. Those beets and turnips are immaculate. I just don't see that in the scriptures. But what I do see is Jesus commending people for their faith. I'm not seeing faith like this in all of Israel. I see him say, daughter, your faith has made you well. I see Jesus say, when the Son of Man returns, will he find faith upon the earth? Hebrews goes on to say that without faith it is impossible to please God. And that verse is in context to people in the Old Testament who had faith. Even during the time of the sacrificial system where they had to do things, they had to work, what God commended them for and said was pleasing was their faith. Jesus fed the multitude of people, and then they came looking for him, and they wanted him to feed him, and Jesus wasn't about that. He wanted them to get the real spiritual food. And so they said, well, Jesus, what can we do? What can we do to do the work of God? I think it's interesting that they said that, do the work of God. And Jesus said, this is the work of God, that you believe in him who he sent. Believe. You see, I think sometimes it's easier for me to believe in the work that my hands can do. Sometimes it's easier for me to say, well, I'll just do this, because it's harder to believe in a God that I can't see sometimes, in a God that I can't feel sometimes, in a God that might feel further away. And I have to say, God, where are you right now? I need to know that you are with me. I need to know that you are present. And I just don't see it. I don't feel it. And so let me just grab a hold of this. Let me do this. What would I do if I knew I already was pleasing? See, I believe that Jesus, when he said it is finished, he means that it is finished. There is nothing left for me to do. These hands have nothing left to bring that is necessary. The only thing that I can bring to the Lord is a gift. It's a gift. The work is finished, and my work is to believe. And when we come to the place where we can rest in that truth and just believe God for who he is and the work that he has already done, knowing that there is nothing left for me to do, then we find true freedom. We find true rest, and we won't be so wrapped up in the things that I do to be pleasing, or the things that I do if I were pleasing. I'm not finished with this conversation with the Lord. This is just where I'm at with it today. But I just wanted to share it with you and close by just making some declarations, because Jesus has told us that we are all pleasing to God in him. When we believe in him, when we accept his gift of his sacrifice, we are pleasing because we are his. We are pleasing because we are children of the Most High God. We are pleasing because Jesus has made it so. And the things that we offer to God, they are gifts, like alabaster jars that we break to pour out on his feet, because we love him.